Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Carolyn Lowe. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks for having me, Rocky.
And I'm excited for the conversation. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Sure. So I'm founder of ROI Swift. We're an Amazon growth agency for brands looking to scale and grow profitably. But prior to that, I was with Dell in a variety of roles for 6 years from 1999 until 2006, and ran everything from a $6 billion division to, after that, I left and went to a $3 million startup mom and baby company. So if you've talked about the whole spectrum, I've done everything from startup to founder to Fortune 100, and all of it has been fun.
Out of curiosity, do they all have the same financial struggles? I mean, in a different way, but the concept of we all struggle financially.
We do, absolutely. If you can imagine Dell hardware, we had very slim margins on a hardware company. Mom and baby company was a smaller company, didn't have a huge research and innovation budget, so it had to be pretty scrappy. And then, of course, founding my own company, ROI Swift, in 2015, that's a whole new set of challenges, but similar challenges, right? Everybody, it's all about profit and margin and revenue. And like you said, profit first applies across all of those industries.
It does. And you use profit first in your business. How has it helped you?
It helped us a lot, Rocky. We realized that what we've noticed is that at times where we were less profitable, we were overstaffed. And we said, okay, we need a labor efficiency ratio of this. And we actually hire based on those labor efficiency ratios. So we said, okay, we have a person doing this job at this rate. There's another person that could do that job at half that rate. As a service business, as an Amazon agency, as you can imagine, 85% of our costs are people. And so getting profit right is incredibly challenging, but you have to do it on the people front first as a service business. Same I think applies to a product business, but for us, the biggest challenge is always in staffing, right? You want to not be understaffed and not be overstaffed.
So when you look at labor ratio, and maybe it's a little different in your company, do you look at it versus revenue or versus gross profit?
For us, revenue is gross profit because
Okay.
yeah,
You don't
we
have
don't have
that.
a cost
Okay.
of goods, right? A lot of people do have cost of goods, and depends on how you view it. But if I had a cost of goods, I would look at labor efficiency ratio on a cost of goods basis.
Do you have a number that you like to be above?
Well, most service businesses should be 2 to 3, right? And so we like to be at least 2. It's great if you can be 3, but anything below 2 is like, losing money.
And just for those of you listening who might not understand this, basically what this says is for every dollar you spend on an employee, you need to generate $2 to $3 in either gross profit if you use gross profit or total revenue if you don't have kind of a cost of goods sold. And it's a great metric to say, is my employee cost efficient and in line with what I need? Now, some companies may have much, much higher numbers because they're machine intensive or something else. That's fine. But you start getting below that X number and you're going to start to struggle. And it's a very easy way month by month to see where you're at. You're also a big fan of EOS.
I am.
And so how has that helped you?
That has really helped getting accountability into our business. There's nowhere to hide. I was just telling you, I went on a college campus tour this morning with my son, who's a junior in high school. And the campus said, hey, the student teacher ratio is 8 to 1. And the class size is 19 to 1. There's nowhere to hide. You're not in a huge university where you can just hide and coast. And it's the same thing with EOS. There's no hiding. There's no coasting. Like if your scorecard metric is red over and over, there's going to be a conversation about, why is this red? What do we need to do? How can we make this better? So I love the accountability. I love all parts of EOS, but especially the accountability and that there's nowhere to hide.
And I think the other thing I find with most business owners, myself included, difficult conversations with our employees are not easy. And so when you see the constant red, not only are you forced to have it, but I think everyone else at the table is looking around going, when are you going to fix this problem? Because if you don't, everybody quickly goes to red, right? Because it's what you tolerate.
Right. And it's the same thing with people, on the GWC, get it, want it, capacity, as well as core values. We look at that and we say, okay, where's your A players? Where's your campers, people who are nice people, meeting the core values, but not super productive, and then we look at, okay, where are your sort of gotta go people, and they're low productivity, low core values. So each quarter, we also have folks rank themselves in our quarterly one-on-ones with their managers. And so they'll rank themselves across core values and get it one at capacity. And then the manager will rank them. And then it's really easy to sort of nip any of those conversations in the bud where there's any disparity between, hey, I think I walk on water. It's like, not really. We've had 3 escalations from your brands, or, if you're in a product business, oh, this product launched and it had 3.5 stars out of 5. I really like having those quarterly conversations and having some empirical data to go back to. Like, okay, here's where you are. Let's have it. And it makes those tough conversations easier because you're going off a scorecard and you're going off a shared metric.
And it does, because you have objective numbers and everybody can see them. So everyone knows what's going on, and now it becomes easier to work off of it. I was just at the EOS conference and they had that kind of chart, and on the one side was, I think, skill, and the other one was like a cultural fit.
Yes.
And they talked about it was high skill, low cultural fit.
Yes. Those folks are your mavericks, like Top Gun Maverick.
Well, no, low cultural fit. So they didn't do well in the culture.
No, that's what I mean with Tom Cruise, right? He was a great pilot, but you're not supposed to buzz the airfield every time you come by. So we call them mavericks because they're really skilled. That's like your really skilled sales guy, but who's like a bull in the china shop and is rude to everybody in the company, but you keep him around because he's really, or she's really good at their job. So we call them kind of mavericks, like after Top Gun, like great pilot, but whoa, bad culture fit.
She called them terrorists.
We don't like that. In the past, we've used that term, and we've recently changed to maverick because that's really like, wow, they're sabotaging your company. They're trying to blow you up. I think they're quietly doing it, right? They're destroying your culture. We've had some of those mavericks in our culture before. And what we found is once they were gone, our culture came back. Like they destroyed our culture, and we let them stick around for too long.
And that was the one question. Can you fix it? And she was clear cut. No. Like that is not a fixable problem more often than not.
Yeah, no, you can teach people skills. You can't teach them to care, or you can't teach them to live your core values, which is why I feel like core values is such an important part to get right in the interview process.
And make sure you hire the core values, because otherwise you have a maverick/terrorist on your team. So let's get back to making money, because that's what we're here for. Cash conversion cycle. And, I don't think we've talked about this enough. I know, especially in the Amazon world, in the world of Dell, probably in many companies, this is extremely important. And the cash conversion cycle, for those of you who may not be familiar with this term, is basically when you spend $1 to start the process of creating whatever you're delivering, how long till the dollar gets returned to you? Plus profit, of course, right? And everything else that should come with it. What have you noticed with cash conversion cycle, and how do you guys manage it?
So for a service business, here's the interesting thing. I'll tell you about our company specifically, and then there's some things you can do on the Amazon side if anyone out there has got a product company and they're selling on Amazon. But in our company, we pay our employees on the 15th and the 30th. And so I spent 6 years at Dell, so I know all about how to get cash and not pay vendors later. So we invoice everybody on the 1st. Everybody is net 10. And so by the 10th of the month, typically we have all of our cash in for the month. And then our biggest expenses are people, which are 85% of our expenses. So we pay our employees on the 15th and the 30th. So our cash conversion cycle is -5 days for half and, -20 days for the other half. And then our expenses, we pay them all on credit card. And so we make sure that all of our bills are not due. Like you can pick your date, which date you want your credit card bills due. So we usually pick something closer to the end of the month after we've got all of our cash in.
And all of that is key. And I don't think people really even realize you get to pick, right? You can choose when your credit card bills are due. You picked a payroll cycle. I know a lot of businesses pay every 2 weeks. And the problem with that is twice a year, you get hammered with that extra payroll. And it would be hard for you to do what you're doing if you paid every 2 weeks, because those weeks would keep changing.
Right. My husband's company does that. It's horrible.
Yeah. But these are like, I don't think people think through these things when they pick how are we going to do payroll? How are we going to set up when our credit cards due? And all of these different things, and to time them across different bills. So if you're paying 15th and 30th, you got to figure out when you want the credit card bill due so that it's not hitting at the same time as payroll. That's all.
Right. And more importantly, if all of our cash is in by the 10th, we've got a few stragglers, but all 100% of our cash for that month is in by the 12th, and we're not paying our second payroll and our credit card until the 24th or 25th, that's a couple weeks that we, get to keep that cash and make some money on that cash.
And so we bill on the first, and well, we actually, technically, I don't. I have rolling billing. Whatever the day is for the cycle for that client, it hits and bills prior to. So like you, we get paid up front. So I don't have a problem with it. But I think for a lot of people in different different types of companies, they don't think about it. So you think about the trades, you're putting in out for materials. Are you collecting money up front to cover that? And then the other problem is deposits. A lot of business owners will get deposits and spend it on today's expenses. And then when that expense comes due, they get into a tight situation because they spent the money. In other words, it's like you taking all your money and spending it before that second payroll comes, not realizing that has to be done. So these are thinking decisions, right?
Yeah.
How are we going to lay out our cash? Now, I know you've worked, well, at Dell, you worked with Costco, right? So cash conversions cycles, I think, for Costco aren't pretty. Maybe at Dell, you got a good contract, but a lot of people selling into Costco might have 3-6 month cash conversion cycles.
Yes, a lot of people, and same like you said, same with Amazon, right? You're buying your product, you're usually paying for it 6 months ahead of time, and then you're selling it, and then you're getting paid by your customers. I mean, a lot of times in product companies, they're taking lines of credit, and they're not renegotiating better supplier terms where, hey, I'll pay you half now and half on, arrival once it gets off the water. So I think a lot of folks recently are going back and doing supplier negotiations, but Dell was one of the best at supplier negotiations, and of course Costco too. I mean, obviously the bigger you are, the more leverage you have.
Do you find small companies have much leverage?
In some cases, we're right up front. Before we even sign on with someone, we're right up front about what our terms are. And so, no one's ever surprised by that. The other thing I've seen a lot of small and medium business do is not stay on top of their receivables. So we have a metric on our scorecard that, do we have more than $10,000? I mean, we have a tiny amount that we allow more than 3 days overdue. The nice thing about that is, as you know, the longer it takes to pay something, the less chance you have of collecting it, right? And so we're still doing work for them in that month. And so if anything goes more than 3 days overdue, I mean, that's usually one to two invoices for us. So we are right on top of it because we've been burned before. Early on, we wrote off, not a lot, but we wrote off $10,000 or $20,000. But it's like, wouldn't you rather have that $10,000 or $20,000 in your pocket for work that you had done? So that's the other thing I feel like all businesses need to do is say, have a tiny amount that you allow for more than 3 days past due. And, we've started directly ACHing our customers on a certain date. And so, okay, your invoice is due on this date. Boom, we just hit your bank account. You don't even have to worry about paying us.
And that's what I do. That's why I was like, but it's a rolling date depending on the client. So it's not like they all hit on the first. It's whatever that client's date is. It just auto hits on that date, and it makes it easy. And it's one less thing for me to do, which is collections, because that's more work, which goes to overhead, which means you got to pay somebody to do that. And I'm assuming you've got processes then in place for somebody to notice that occurred and then to do something about it.
Yes, there's auto notifications that go out, and then as well as there's a 3-day overdue invoice report that gets auto emailed for anybody who's 3 days overdue as soon as they hit 3 days overdue.
And I think even QuickBooks will do that for you. And
Yeah.
it'll also, you can get copied on the email so you
Yes.
know that something went out. There's a lot of ways to set up systems and processes to kind of keep on top of this. You just have to do it up front. This is all about working on your business instead of in your business. And it makes things a lot easier when you do it right up front.
Yes. Yes. I think our team, our entire company probably spends less than 3 minutes a week on collections.
That's the way it should be. Yeah, definitely the way it should be. The other thing that I find a lot of companies do, doesn't matter whether they're big or small, and especially on Amazon, they sell what's not profitable. And they may or may not even know it.
It's so true. Everybody from small companies to even there's a company we work with that was a $30 million natural cleaning company. And we looked at what they were selling on Amazon. They were selling only $30,000 a month, but they were selling it unprofitably. They never looked at their SKU level economics. So on Amazon, it's almost impossible, not quite, to make money on a product that's less than $12, between the shipping fees, the inbound fees, the Amazon fees. So we said, if you stop selling these products, you would actually make more money. Like if you did nothing, if you stopped and exerted less effort, you would make more money. So what we did was we changed the sizes, we made them bigger packs, we optimized for the weights and balances so that you could get the lowest percent of shipping fee as a percent of revenue. And I don't think enough companies do that, both on their online stores as well as Amazon actually has a report and you can spit it out. And so you can put my contact info in the show notes here, whatever, but I can hand out that link to folks if they want it, and it'll tell you exactly what percentage you're making on every single one of your products before COGS. Obviously, you could just add a column for your COGS, but you would be so surprised. People were like making anywhere from 8% on one product to 70% on another product. I said, we need to be advertising the product that you're making 70% on and cut the product that you're making single digits on.
And Amazon does allow you to input your COGS
It
into
does.
their system.
It does, but we don't like to give Amazon any data.
And I don't disagree with you.
Because then they'll just knock you off and make an Amazon Basics version of it.
Be careful where your data goes. So you have to do that off. Yeah, that would make total sense. But even when you look at their costs, you can at least get a percentage of the total sale coming back to you. A lot of the clients that I've worked with actually did put their COGS in.
Yeah.
And so we would just run the report right on Amazon and I would sort it right in their system. I go, all of these products you lost money on, which means you paid somebody to buy your product.
Yes.
We need to stop that immediately. And then just like you said, focusing on the ones that have the fat margin, and then spend your time going there and being able to ship. And the reality is this happens at every size company. Fortune 500 companies have this same problem because for them, it's even harder to figure out. A small company can kind of figure out their costs much easier. These big companies, it all gets lost somewhere and no one has the incentive to go looking for it, which is kind of weird. And the second part of the incentive is, in a small business, if you said work less, make more, they'd be like, sure. You go to a big company and say, cut your sales 30% and double your profits. Wall Street doesn't like that.
They don't. They like top line growth and margin growth. So normally we tell people it's hard to get both. It's hard to get both top line and profit growth, meaning profit percentage growth. But, that's what Wall Street wants. And that's why a lot of companies, Dell went back to private. When I was there, we were doing the Wall Street dance every quarter. I'll tell you, there's one company who does something really smart. It was Qualcomm. And what they do is they have a separate P&L that they report on for QSI, Qualcomm Strategic Initiatives. And so any sort of new products they're launching, they say, hey, here's our core business P&L, and this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to make. But we're going to carve out this for some strategic initiatives. And it's sort of like investments. 9 of them will probably not make sense, but one of them will. And so I think that's a good way for a public company to let Wall Street be okay with, here's our core business P&L, but here's our strategic initiatives. And we're okay if we break even or lose money on our strategic initiatives. And most companies don't do that.
And you have flexibility of how you do things. I mean, I was just reading Warren Buffett's quarterly newsletter, and he pretty much said, this is how we look at the numbers. We don't care about EBITDA. If you want to look at that, go ahead. But here's what we really did, and this is how we look at cash flow and growth and everything else. So, yeah, I don't know why more companies don't do that. Do you?
I don't I think it's the Wall Street effect, and it's also it's hard. I've got a bucket this here and this goes in this bucket. And like you said, the bigger the company, the harder it is to get rid of those expenses, right? Or to layer out those expenses. And you just saw Amazon's laying off tens of thousands of middle managers to be profitable again. They're like, we're too management heavy.
Well, yeah, I know most of tech did a lot of layoffs over the last 2 to 3 years.
Right.
And well, they hired too much to begin with. And so that's why they need to cut. And regardless of your political beliefs, the government is no different.
That's right.
They need to cut their spending as well. So, one of the other things I've noticed is sometimes we make mistakes in how we cut our costs. And what I mean by that is you might outsource your support. So, these days, a lot of companies have outsourced their phone support to other countries. And invariable, people are like, I don't understand them, or they're not getting the answers they want and the level of support they need. And so while the company saves money, it literally destroys the company. I think one of the ones that was a classic at that was Sears. I mean, if you think about Sears, people don't realize, I mean, Sears was the Amazon of the day,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And growing up, I used to buy stuff at Sears all the time. So they could go into their computer, and mind you, it was like a horrible screen because this was before we had all this color stuff, but they knew everything I bought.
Yes.
And yet they never data mined their data to say, who is this client that's constantly in our store spending thousands of dollars, and how do we reward them versus someone else? They cut their salespeople and how they were paying them. And their salespeople were out making sure that I was buying that stuff. And it's a shame. What have you seen in that realm?
Yeah, so I've seen the same thing in the book. I talk about it. I wrote a book during COVID. Don't ever write a book during COVID about business do's and don'ts. But we saw the same thing at Dell. You know, we had someone in charge who knew all about numbers and said, okay, well, we can save 30% if we offshore customer service. Well, what they didn't realize was it was going to take 3 phone calls to solve the customer's issue because the people weren't as well trained. They staffed them up quickly and they didn't train them well. And so what happened was it ended up costing us 3x as much and destroyed our reputation as sort of the best in computers and the best in tech support. And so, you know, that's a decision where sort of penny wise, pound foolish. And I see that a lot where people, that's the easiest place to cut is customer service, but you like, that's the easiest place to lose loyalty as well.
It very much is. And I still have Dell desktops. I still have desktops. We've moved away on, well, we go half and half on their laptops. It really depends. But yeah, I noticed that just over the years with the service. And that was one of the reasons we went to Dell was the phenomenal service. Back in the day, you know, it was the Wild West in the world of computers, and everything goes up and down. And I think you have to prepare for that and be ready for that within your business. What are the biggest struggles? You know, you're working with business owners all the time. What are the biggest struggles that you tend to see?
Well, right now it's the dirty T word, tariffs. And so I've got another business owner I know who makes at-home gym equipment who was in China last week and was giving us a rundown of what it's like boots on the ground in China, and some factories closing, laying people off. People are very fearful. So right now I see the biggest issue to anybody who's got a product company is tariffs. I mean, a lot of the brands we work with were very smart. Right after the election, they moved production, found alternative sources, all of those things. But the other folks are just having to just jack prices up. They're turning stuff around on the water. They don't want to take hold of it. So I think that's the biggest issue facing product companies right now.
And I'm a little confused because let's face it, if I'm selling product X and my competitor is selling product X too, the reality is we're both going to get hit with the same tariff. So as long as we both raise prices, that's just it. Now, the question is, if the price goes up, will demand go down? Which is possible. It very well could. But you're not at a competitive disadvantage necessarily unless you're competing with something made in America, possibly.
Right.
But then they have the price differences of that cost. There was an article in yesterday's paper, you know, these smokeless fire pits?
Yes.
So there's 2 companies that actually build the majority of them. One took off like crazy. They build theirs in China. And so the tariffs were literally the nail in the coffin. They had a whole bunch of other nails in their coffin and it's collapsing. But this other company actually was Amish built in the US. And they, even though they've struggled and been behind the whole time and going slowly, they are now just taking off. Now, there was a big price difference, 300 versus 500. But that's what they promoted, American built, high quality, and there's a market for everything. You've got to learn how to pivot and how to do that. I mean, that's never going to change. I mean, you've been in business a long time. I guess the one constant is change, right?
That is true. That is true. The other thing too that I think what we're seeing a little bit of so far is that people are delaying purchases, especially like things like clothing, or we're seeing more like secondhand clothing purchases. Do I really need this? So it's not that like, are they going to buy mine or are they going to buy my competitors? We're both in the same boat. It's like, are they going to buy anything?
And that I could see. I mean, that's a definite. I think consumers, because of inflation, have gotten squished all around. I mean, I know rents are up and eating out is through. Those are the what I see, rents and eating out. Average daily products, some go up, some go down. They seem to be bouncing around from time to time, depending on what they are. But again, even though wages went up, I don't think they were as commensurate with what people are seeing in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other things that you're noticing with businesses? What are you telling them? Like, with all these problems that they're facing, how do you help them pivot, or what's kind of the philosophy or advice for them?
Yeah, so we work with some really good premium brands. Luckily, they're not seeing a slowdown yet. A lot of them have either moved manufacturing so they can keep prices where they are now, or they're looking at moving manufacturing. Some have taken some small, like 10% price increases. But across the board, I think what we're seeing is just a sort of, this is one of the most uncertain times we've seen in a while, just because no one's really sure what the administration is going to do. We have seen people actually move manufacturing to the US and be somewhat competitive. So that's encouraging. I think a lot of stuff with robotics and AI, like if you've ever visited an Amazon warehouse, have you ever visited an Amazon warehouse?
I've not. I've seen some of the pictures, but
Yeah.
I have not actually been to one.
It's a free tour. Anybody can sign up for it. They're all over the country, so I can drop that link too in the show notes if you want. When I did the Fort Worth one, this was even before COVID, so this was 2019, 2018. Already, robots place an order on Amazon. A robot picks it from these massive shelves, like think Costco. Little yellow robot goes up, picks it, picks a whole bunch more, puts it all on its robot shelves, brings it over there, drops it in. Box gets spit out. Exact right size tape for that size box gets spit out. And this was 2018, 2019. So, I mean, that has already reduced how many people it takes to make stuff or to fulfill stuff. So I think that actually AI and robotics will help manufacturing in the US a lot be much more competitive.
And I know everyone's talking about the iPhone and how the price is going to skyrocket. The funny thing is, the company that makes the iPhone, I thought they have robotics plants in Europe as well for the iPhone. And they actually said the robots are better because the wires are so tiny. Even China struggles with doing them manually. So I think you're right. I think a lot more. The factories of yesterday are not the factories of today. And I've been shocked at walking into some of these larger facilities, and it's people sitting at keyboards. It's not people on assembly lines. They're just making sure that the systems are up and running, and robotics is definitely making a big impact in how that all comes to be.
I think so. I mean, right? People used to make cars and now largely robots make cars, right? And then think about the guy or gal who mows your lawn. There's going to be a Roomba for your lawnmower, and that person's going to need to reinvent themselves, right? They already have the Roomba for vacuuming inside your house. I'm like, I want the Roomba that, mows my lawn automatically.
They have those.
Oh, well, send me the link. I need to get one.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them that do it. They're getting better and better.
Okay.
But they work well. It depends on your lawn. You have to install. I mean,
we have a odd shaped lawn.
That doesn't matter.
Perfect square.
Some of them use GPS. Some of them use like a training wire, kind of like your dog fence wire.
Yes.
But yeah, what basically happens is the lawn mower just goes out and cuts every single day. It doesn't cut your entire lawn, but it cuts sections at a time. And so your lawn never really grows because it's always constantly being cut. But you have to maintain the mower.
Okay.
They're all electric. They self-park, they self-charge. They're actually also making commercial versions that can do commercial sites. So big, massive.
The big ride-on massive ones, right?
Well, you don't have to ride on them because
Right.
there's no
The robot massive ones.
robot massive ones. Yeah, the world is changing. With all that change, though, I mean, what are people going to do for jobs? Any idea?
Well, there's a great AI brilliant scientist named Byron Reese. And I met with him a while ago and he came and he spoke to a bunch of us CEOs. And he, it's sort of the same thing. It's like, well, what happened to all those people that used to work in auto plants? Well, they found new jobs, it's like, so I think there's just going to be different types of jobs. There's going to be more, I came from a college visit today and they have an entire AI department. It's, and it's not just, it used to be STEM or engineering and now it's AI. And so I think people are just going to have to sort of reinvent themselves. I think about it. My dad's dad in Massachusetts worked in a plant in Lowell, Massachusetts, like, in a mill. And those jobs are all gone, right? All the mill towns are gone. That's all been moved and automated. I think people are just going to have to reinvent themselves and learn those new skills for, the next 10 generations. 10 decades.
It's a period of disruption. Either you change with it or I don't know. I guess you get left behind. And it's always been like that. Just in my lifetime, I've seen massive change and you've got to keep moving forward and doing that. Any closing thoughts for our listeners?
It's interesting you talked about moving forward and constantly adapting. And I'll tell you, the one company that didn't adapt was Kodak. They made the best cameras, right? And then when all of a sudden you have a camera in the palm of your hand that's better than, Kodak, they just sort of didn't reinvent themselves. They were known for this and they didn't see it coming and they didn't, adapt and look what happened to them.
They actually invented the digital camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't commercialize it, I guess.
Right. And they just sort of stopped at that. They stopped innovating, right? So as things change, you need to constantly innovate. For example, for us with our Amazon brands, we use AI to do about 80% of analysis, and then we have a human make the decision. But the stuff where it's like someone poring over a spreadsheet, that doesn't need to happen anymore, right? Same thing with imagery. We'll put a bunch of stuff in, AI will do 80% of it, and then our graphic designers will do the rest of it. And it's like, it's not displacing jobs. It's allowing us, we have to be even more productive, right? Or back to our original conversation, our labor efficiency ratio is going to be next to nothing if we're doing this all manually.
That is true. And that's what I found. For me, AI is really good about going from 0 to 50 or 60%, maybe 80%. And then you've got to finish it. You can't just do the 50 or 60. You really do need to finish it, but it gets me moving quickly and towards the finish line, and then I polish it off, and then we're good.
That's right.
If people would like to learn more about you or the book, how can they do that?
So the book, you can get on Amazon.com. You can just type in my name, Carolyn Lowe, Lowe, it'll come up. And if you'd like to know more about Amazon or get a complimentary assessment, if you're selling on Amazon and any of this is resonating with you, you can reach out to us at ROI Swift, SWIFT.com.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Rocky.
Hey, thanks for listening to the entire unedited video of the Profit Answer Man podcast. You can actually get the full podcast in audio only format here on YouTube or any other of your favorite podcast players. Don't forget to go check out episodes 1 through 13. They lay out the foundation of Profit First in the book and how to get started. In addition, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to check out. And if you remember to subscribe, you'll always be updated when we put a new one out every single week. Thanks for listening. Have a profitable week.